I had been inseparable since freshman year of college. 7 years of friendship, road trips, late-night study sessions, job hunting together, holding each other through breakups and family drama. We were the kind of friends who could finish each other's sentences, who had inside jokes that made no sense to anyone else, who knew exactly what the other needed without asking. She was the first person I called when I got a promotion. I was the first person she called when her dad got sick. We had standing Thursday night dinners and Sunday morning coffee dates. We were each other's emergency contacts. We were family. Then she met Eric. It started innocently enough. "Hey, I can't make Thursday dinner this week. Eric got tickets to a concert." I understood. New relationships are exciting, and it was just one dinner. But then it was the next Thursday, too, and the Sunday coffee date, and my texts started going unanswered for hours, then days. "Sorry," she'd eventually reply. "Been so busy with Eric. We'll catch up soon." But soon never came. I tried not to be that friend, the clingy one who can't handle when their friend finds happiness. I gave her space. I sent occasional messages just to check in. I liked her Instagram posts of her and Eric at beaches, restaurants, concerts, all the places we used to go together. After about 2 months, I invited her to my birthday dinner. It was a small gathering, just a few close friends at my favorite restaurant. She'd never missed my birthday before. "I'll be there," she promised. The night of my birthday, I kept glancing at the door, waiting for her to arrive. I checked my phone repeatedly, but there were no messages. As dessert was served, I finally got a text. "So sorry, lost track of time with Eric. Hope you're having a great birthday." I stared at my phone, feeling my heart sink. She was 15 minutes away. She hadn't forgotten. She had just chosen not to come. That night, after everyone had left, I sat on my couch and cried. It wasn't just about the birthday. It was about realizing that our friendship, what I had thought was one of the most important relationships in my life, apparently meant nothing to her now that she had Eric. I decided to try one last time. I called her the next day. "Jamie, I miss you," I said simply when she picked up. "I feel like I've lost my best friend." There was a pause, and for a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to her. "I'm just really busy right now," she said, her voice distant. "Eric and I are trying to spend as much time together as possible. I'm sure you understand." "Actually, I don't understand," I replied. "Friends make time for each other, even when they're in relationships." She sighed, that exasperated sound she made when she thought someone was being unreasonable. "Look, things change. People change. I can't always be available like I was before." "I'm not asking for always," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm asking for sometimes. For you to show up when you say you will. For you to remember that I exist." "You're being dramatic," she said. "It's not like I've disappeared." But she had. And after that call, she disappeared even more completely. My occasional texts went unanswered. My birthday present to her sat wrapped in my closet. I watched through social media as she and Eric traveled, went to parties, built their life together, a life that clearly had no room for me. After a few months, I stopped trying. I grieved our friendship like a death because that's what it was. The person I had trusted most had walked away without a second thought. I found new Thursday night dinner companions. I started a book club. I focused on other friendships that had been sitting on the back burner. I dated a little, though nothing serious. I built a life that didn't have Jamie-shaped holes in it. And then, almost exactly a year after she'd started dating Eric, my phone lit up with her name. "Hey, can we talk? I really need a friend." I stared at the message, feeling a storm of emotions, anger, vindication, curiosity, and buried underneath it all, a faint flicker of the love I'd had for my oldest friend. Before I could decide how to respond, another message came through. "Eric cheated on me with my coworker. Everyone knew but me. I feel so stupid and alone." And there it was. The reason she was reaching out now, not because she missed me or had realized what she'd thrown away, but because she needed someone. Because the person she'd abandoned me for had abandoned her. I thought about all the times I'd needed her in the past year. The day I didn't get the promotion I'd been working toward for months. The night my grandmother died. The weekend my apartment flooded and I had nowhere to stay. All the moments, big and small, when I would have called Jamie before, but instead had to figure things out alone. I took a deep breath and typed, "Oh, sorry, I'm so busy." My finger hovered over the send button for a long moment before I hit it. It felt both vindicating and terrible. This wasn't who I was. I wasn't cruel or petty, but something in me needed her to understand, even for a moment, what it felt like to reach out to someone you thought would always be there for you, only to discover they weren't. My phone rang almost immediately. Jamie. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. Then the texts started. "Please, I know I deserve this, but I really need you. I'm sorry, I know I was a terrible friend. I have no right to ask, but please call me back. I don't have anyone else." Each message twisted the knife deeper. I remembered suddenly why we'd been friends for so long before Eric. Jamie had a way of disarming you, of making you feel like the most important person in the world when she focused her attention on you. Of course, I now knew the flip side of that, how quickly you could become irrelevant when something more interesting came along. I turned off my phone and went to bed, but I barely slept. By morning, I had made a decision. I turned my phone back on to find a dozen more messages from Jamie, each more desperate than the last. I called her. "Oh, thank God," she answered on the first ring, her voice thick with tears. "I thought you hated me." "I don't hate you," I said carefully. "But I'm not the same person who would drop everything to be there for you anymore. That person trusted you, and you threw that away." She was quiet for a moment. "I know," she finally said. "I was so wrapped up in Eric that I couldn't see what I was doing. I convinced myself that you'd always be there when I was ready to come back." "That's not how friendship works," I said, surprised by how calm I felt. "It's not something you can put on a shelf and pick up again when it's convenient." "I know that now," she whispered. I don't have anyone else, and I'm falling apart." I closed my eyes, fighting the instinct to comfort her, to slip back into our old pattern. "Where are you staying?" I asked instead. "A hotel," she said. I couldn't stay at our apartment knowing he'd been there with her. "Okay, meet me at Caffeine Dreams in an hour." It was the coffee shop where we'd had our Sunday morning ritual for years. When I arrived, Jamie was already there, sitting at our old table by the window. She looked terrible, eyes red and puffy, hair unwashed, wearing what appeared to be pajama pants with a wrinkled t-shirt. She jumped up when she saw me, moving as if to hug me before reading my body language and stopping awkwardly. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting back down. I nodded and took the seat across from her. "You look like hell." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Yeah, well, turns out my boyfriend has been sleeping with my coworker for the past 3 months, so—" "How did you find out?" I asked, not because I particularly cared about the details of her relationship drama, but because it seemed like the expected question. He left his laptop open. I saw their messages. She twisted a napkin in her hands. They've been planning a trip together, to the beach house where he took me for our 6-month anniversary. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. No one deserved that kind of betrayal, not even someone who had been a terrible friend. The worst part is that some of our friends knew. They saw them together at a bar when Eric was supposed to be out of town for work. She looked up at me, her eyes filling with fresh tears. "No one told me. I had no one in my corner." The irony wasn't lost on me. "That's because you pushed everyone who cared about you away." She flinched, but nodded. "I know. I became one of those girls who drops their friends as soon as they get a boyfriend. I always swore I'd never be that person, but—" She trailed off. "But you were," I finished for her. "Yes." She met my eyes directly for the first time. "I was awful to you. I can see that now. I don't expect you to forgive me or to be there for me through this. I needed to tell you I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry." I sat back, studying her. The Jamie I'd known before Eric had been self-centered at times, but never deliberately cruel. She had been a good friend in many ways, generous with her time, enthusiastic about my successes, supportive through my failures. It was only after Eric that she'd become someone I didn't recognize. "What do you want from me, Jamie?" I asked finally. "Are you just here because you need someone to help you through your breakup? Or do you actually miss our friendship?" She looked down at her hands. "Both," she admitted. "When everything fell apart with Eric, you were the first person I wanted to call. Not because I needed someone, but because you were always the person who helped me make sense of things. But I know I gave up the right to ask that of you." We sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop bustled around us, people coming and going, living their lives. "I can't just pick up where we left off," I said finally. "Too much has happened. I had to learn how to live without you." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I understand. But," I continued, "I am willing to have coffee with you today, and maybe another day, and we can see where it goes from there." Hope flickered across her face. "Really?" "Really," I said, "but I need you to understand something. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I've changed. My life has changed. If we're going to rebuild any kind of friendship, it has to be something new. Not what we had before." "Okay," she said, wiping her eyes. "I can work with that." We spent the next hour catching up. I told her about my new promotion, the book club I'd started, the trip I was planning to Portugal. She told me about the mess with Eric, how she'd been working on a series of paintings she was actually proud of, how she'd reconnected with her brother after years of distance. It wasn't the easy flow of conversation we'd once had, but it wasn't terrible either. There were awkward pauses, moments when we both reached for memories of our shared past only to pull back, uncertain if those references were still allowed. When it was time to leave, she asked, "Can we do this again?" I nodded. "Text me next week. We'll figure something out." "Thank you," she said, "for giving me a chance I probably don't deserve." I smiled, a small but genuine smile. Everyone deserves a second chance, but just one. As I walked away, I felt lighter somehow. Not because I'd forgiven Jamie completely, that would take time if it happened at all, but because I'd faced the situation on my own terms. I hadn't fallen back into being her emotional support at the expense of my own boundaries, but I hadn't shut the door entirely either. I didn't know if we would ever rebuild what we once had. Probably not. Some betrayals leave permanent marks. But maybe we could create something new, something that honored who we both were now, rather than who we'd been before. And if not, if this coffee was the last time we ever really talked, then at least I'd chosen compassion over spite, growth over stagnation. I'd chosen to be the kind of person I wanted to be, regardless of how others had treated me. In the end, that felt like the greatest victory of all. Over the next few months, Jamie and I did meet occasionally. Coffee every few weeks turned into occasional dinners. We were careful, with each other in a way we'd never been before. No assumptions, no expectations. She respected my boundaries, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. I watched as she rebuilt her life post-Eric, finding her own apartment, focusing on her art, slowly reconnecting with other friends she'd neglected. 6 months after that first coffee, I invited her to a small gathering at my place. As I watched her laughing with my new friends, I realized something important. I didn't need Jamie anymore, not the way I once had. I had built a full life without her, but I was choosing to make space for her anyway, not out of habit or history or obligation, but because I found value in who she was becoming. And that, I realized, was what real friendship should be all about, not dependence or convenience, but a genuine choice to be in each other's lives, even when it's complicated, even when it's hard. We would never be what we were before, but maybe what we were becoming was stronger because it was built on truth rather than expectation, on choice rather than habit, on forgiveness rather than resentment. Only time would tell. Let me know what you think in the comments